Hello, this is William Cook. I'm coming to you from Salem, Oregon, in the heart of the Willamette Valley. You may have heard of the valley. It's famous for grass seed farms, Christmas tree farms, and vineyards. Vineyards which produce some world-class Pinot Noir. I'd like to extend my thanks to Litnix Journal for inviting me to do this author spotlight to talk about my latest novel, Persona, a psychological thriller. Persona is the story of flawed psychiatrist Carter Lane, who inherits the caseload of his dear friend Michael when Michael commits suicide. One of the patients on that caseload is Arthur Frampton. Frampton suffers from dissociative identity disorder, what used to be called multiple personality disorder. When a terrible murder is committed, Lane believes it was one of Frampton's alternate personalities. The police are not buying that story. They believe that Lane himself committed the murder. In writing this, my first wish, of course, was to write an entertaining story, something that would be interesting, engaging, fun. At the same time, I didn't want it to be just fluff. I didn't want it to be like that half a bag of potato chips that you forget about after you've munched the last chip. I wanted it to be a thoughtful thriller. I wanted to stimulate the reader. I wanted to challenge the reader. So, in my novel, Lane is caught between truth, memory, and identity. Truth, given our current state of affairs, social media and AI are making it more and more difficult to determine what is true and what is not. It reminds me of that 2,000-year-old story of Pontius Pilate encountering Jesus and saying, "What is truth?" Memory plays a key role in this story because the characters are haunted by a grisly crime committed 30 years before, a crime that the press labeled the Hoffman Horror. The murder that's currently been committed mimics the fashion, the style of the Hoffman Horror. It's as though the past refuses to stay buried. The identity piece looks at what happens when identity is fractured. Is it possible for a person to have more than one identity? Identities that can take over the action of the body. In writing this, I was inspired initially by Anna O, written by Matthew Blake, and The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. It occurred to me in reading those books, I can draw upon my own past for this story. I have a history of working for 37 years as a mental health therapist. And over the course of working in several different hospitals and clinics, I encountered several patients with that diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder. I'll never forget meeting in my office with a man of about 45 years old who looked at me, blinked his eyes, and suddenly leaped out of the chair and crawled behind another chair in my office and started speaking in the voice of a 2 or 3-year-old child. He had switched identities in that blink of an eye. So I thought, I can bring a real authenticity to this novel. I can bring experience to it. Now, what I hope... let me add this. Lane himself often muses about what is identity? Who am I? Who is this patient I'm treating? And he expresses an opinion that I'll quote here. He says, identity may be the last great mystery. Some people who have endured unspeakable evil become heroes who save lives, who shine a healing light into this dark world, while others become serial killers, perpetuating the very darkness that crippled them. So my hope, when the reader turns the final page, what they'll take with them, my hope is that they will ask themselves that most important question: who am I? And take it a step further. Am I the person I wanted to be when I was growing up? Or have I strayed from the path? Is there some mid-course correction I can make? If you remember your Psychology 101, Erickson talked about the 8 stages of human development. He called adolescence the stage of identity versus role confusion, where that primordial question is, who am I? That begins the journey of our search for self. If we're fortunate enough to live to the final stage, integrity versus despair, our challenge becomes, have I lived a meaningful life? So that's my hope. In writing the book, there were several scenes, chapters that really caught me, inspired me, challenged me, were a particular joy to write. One of those chapters is entitled Into the Labyrinth. In that chapter, Arthur Frampton, who is a video game designer, seems to enter into the video game he's creating. That chapter surprised me. There are elements of raw horror in that chapter that caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared for that. Another chapter that, in a way, was kind of inspiring for me is called From the Room of Forgotten Souls. To do research on that chapter, I went to the grounds of the Oregon State Hospital and visited the Cremains Memorial there. I had not known that there had been a crematorium there, and that between the years of 1913 and 1971, 5,300 bodies were cremated. Their ashes were put into copper urns and were stored away in a back room of the state hospital. They were discovered by a state representative who was able to get this memorial built. Now, the memorial itself is a small building with a glass face, and then it's surrounded by a metal columbarium wall. When you look through the glass face, you can see the original copper canisters that the ashes used to be in, some with a patina of green oxidation. Some family members were able to get the ashes back, but still several thousand remain. Now these ashes are kept in ceramic canisters in that columbarium wall. In front of that glass face is a long wooden bench that invites one to sit and reflect. It's a perfect, quiet place for meditation. In the story, Carter Lane goes there frequently to come back to himself, to de-stress, to relieve himself of the anxiety that he's encountering. And then a chapter that I especially liked, pretty cinematic, is the denouement, the chapter called Of Monsters and Masks. This is the chapter where it all comes together, the twists, the turns, all of that comes together and clicks into place, much like solving a Rubik's Cube. All the colors are aligned. It's done. So, my hope is that you as reader would enjoy reading my story as much as I enjoyed writing it. I hope you find it a satisfying experience. I hope you find it worth your time, worth your while. Now, I have to confess, I have a fantasy. If only lightning would strike fantasy. And in that fantasy, an executive from Netflix or Amazon or Apple Plus comes to me and says, "Hey, Will, we're thinking of doing a series on your novel Persona. Would you be on board for that?" And my answer, hell yeah, let's get started now. So thank you, as my audience. Feel free to visit my website and check out some of my other books. I have also written a series of mysteries called the Driftwood Mysteries, set on the Oregon coast, and I have several volumes of short stories. My thanks again to Litnix Journal for making this author spotlight possible. It has been a pleasure. I hope you have enjoyed it. Goodbye for now.